Welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones. I am a certified personal trainer, and I'm here to help you achieve your fitness goals without pain. In each episode, I'll share tips and strategies that will help you stay safe and pain-free while you're working out. I'll also interview experts in the field of fitness and pain management. So if you're ready to learn how to stay active and pain-free, then subscribe to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast today. Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Pain-Free Athlete Podcast. I'm your host, Dana Jones, and today I am joined by a special guest, Ernest Allen. Ernest is a former college and professional football player who transitioned into a successful career as a strength and conditioning coach. He is the founder and head health and performance coach for Atlas Performance Training. And welcome, Ernest. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much for having me, Dana. It is a pleasure. Yes, I played football for longer than I should feel some days. But I played in college, and I played professionally. I signed with the Seattle Seahawks as a free agent out of college, and then I went to the World League, and then I transitioned from the World League, and I played arena football for 13 years. With several teams, and I had met some really cool people. I ended up settling here in Orlando, Florida. And then I started my business after like 3 years after I retired. But yeah,
That's amazing. So I guess let's go back to the beginning.
yeah.
Well, maybe not that far back, but we'll go to college. So you are at University of Cincinnati, which is a pretty good, like not a slouchy football program, pretty tough football program.
Yeah.
And so what were your days like? Because I was a softball player. I don't know what a football player's life is like in college.
Yeah, well, it's not a slouchy program now. It's evolved into a very, very successful program over the last like 15 years. When I was there, we were not that good, but we were competitive. My days were really, it just depended on the time of the year. During the summers, late summers, it was training camp. Then we rolled into the regular season. Training camp was 2-a-days. They don't do 2-a-days anymore, where you practice twice a day. When you come in at 6 a.m., you're in your seat in the meetings at 7:30, and then by like 8:39, you're on the field after meetings. Then you break for lunch at 11:30. Then you got to have like 20 minutes to take a nap before you got to be back in meetings at 2. Then you go from 2 to like 2 to like 3:30. Then you're back on the field like at a 3:45, and you're going from 4 up until 6 o'clock at night. Then you go back to meetings after the second practice. Then you have nothing left but to go to bed. We did that for, back then we would do 2-a-days for like 2.5 weeks. And it was hellacious. And they don't do that anymore. They kind of really, to limit contact and, to make sure player safety is not an issue. But that'll be a normal day during the regular season, during the preseason, and then the regular season, it would be class. I would go to practice. We meet, then we go to practice, then we have training table, and then we have study hall if you have bad grades. So I was in study hall.
Sorry, me too.
And so then you pick it back up and go over all over again. And then winter conditioning was starting in January. You get up at 4 in the morning, and you had to be in the locker room by 5, be out in the we had an armory that we used to train in. It's like a building with no heat. And we would go in there and we would do all our conditioning drills. And then we'd be done by like 6. Then you go eat, go to class, rinse and repeat. And then in the spring, you have spring ball. And everything would go into spring ball for like 15 days. And then after spring ball, you're pretty much done with football until we started summer conditioning. So it was just very,
That's a long day.
It was, but to be honest, it taught me how to have a structured day, and it taught me how to handle a tough day. Because if you go through 2-a-day practices where you're getting dressed in pants twice a day, you're practicing in heavy heat. You're doing that almost for like almost 2.5, 3 weeks. That gives you some calluses on the mind. That gives you the ability to kind of like deal with some tough stuff. So
Now,
yeah.
how did you deal with that nutritionally? Because you have to lose weight.
Oh yeah, they monitored our weight before each practice. You have to weigh in like 10 days in. People will start dropping weight.
Mm-hmm.
Before the second practice, you had to weigh in. If you didn't weigh in, you get in trouble. And what they were trying to do, they were trying to limit. You have to weigh in at the beginning of the first practice. You have to weigh in the middle of the practice, and then you have to weigh in at the end of the second practice. And if you had any fluctuations past like 4.5, 5 pounds, they would force you. You would have to hydrate. And
Okay.
nutritionally, everything was handled through training. Through the training table. It's not as extensive as it is now, but it was a balanced, nutritious meal with, just basic protein, carbohydrates, meat and potato type meal.
Yeah.
So yeah, the
Well,
nutrition was.
it's interesting because I have a friend who's a triathlete, and I mean, we're a bunch of us are triathletes, but he's the only person I know that can go out on a ride and ride for 50, 60 miles and lose like 8 pounds.
It's incredible.
And, and for him, that's, a couple hours of riding. And for him to lose that much water, and he drinks, he's drinking the entire time as he's going.
Holy crap.
And it's amazing. And he's not wearing pads and he's not running around a field and the things that y'all are doing. So I wonder, that's a question that I wonder is how much weight are y'all losing?
Yeah, I've seen people drop, like in a day. I've seen people drop like 12 pounds.
Dang.
But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I've seen people drop 12 pounds, especially like at certain positions like wide receiver, where they run heavy, running back, sometimes linebackers. We call them big skill. Big skill would be linebackers, tight ends, and in some cases defensive ends. Linemen were big guys. Nobody really lost a lot of weight. If anything, was the
What
reverse.
position did you play?
I was a defensive tackle.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was a lineman, and I didn't have a problem losing weight at all. I mean, my weight stayed constant. I maybe would fluctuate between like 1 and 2 pounds, and I never had an issue with hydration, nutrition. I made some choices that a 20-year-old, 21-year-old would make. And I enjoyed eating food.
Yeah, that's always a challenge, I'm sure, is dealing with the things that are available. The other day I took some of my high school students to a Coast Guard base that's located here in California. And I was in the Army, and I remember, we didn't have access to anything.
Mm.
And they have snack machines. And they're not eating good snacks.
Mm-mm.
And we didn't eat that stuff. We didn't have it available for us at all. So we just ate what was available to us.
Yeah.
And it definitely wasn't like Takis or
No.
Pepsi or any of that other stuff.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
nutrition plays a huge part. So you go from this, crazy schedule.
Mhm.
Now, as a college athlete, I can vouch for you. Like most schedule, I probably not as bad as yours, but my day was pretty structured as well because I was a catcher. So I had to do the whole wake up in the morning, do pitching and catching practice. Then we had conditioning. Then we'd go to class. After class, we'd go and then we'd have hitting. And then everybody would hit the field and we'd have team practices. And then we'd probably break off for more pitching and catching
Mhm.
depending on what was coming up and if we were going to a tournament or whatever. And then of course we had to hit study hall I had to hit study hall
Me too.
to get that all handled.
Yeah.
So for me, it was not very easy to leave that life. Like once I
Mhm.
graduated, the Army gave me some structure because I still had to do that. But I didn't know what to do with myself after college. Now, you had a whole different plan or, path. You went into professional.
Mm-hmm.
football. And what's that like? Like, what are your days like as a professional player? Because I imagine you have a little bit more time because you're not necessarily going to class, but I'm sure they're filling time because you know exactly who you're playing. And so you got to set up and, so what is like your training schedule, practice schedule, prep for games?
To be honest, what fills in class time when you were in college is film time, watching film, breaking down film, because everything, when you're getting paid to play that sport, and it's even more intense now, they actually can track the amount of hours that you watch film now. Back then they we watched film, and it was available if you wanted to watch it. You had to go into the coach's office, but now everybody has tablets. So watching film and breaking down your opponent first, usually the week will be recovery from the game, start of the week. The second day would be we would do our install for the team coming up, which was a whole process where in the meetings we would talk about who our opponent was, what favorite scheme, what plays they ran, and then we would go over, what our game plan possibly would be. And then the next day we would have our install. After we did the scheme install for the opponent, we would do our install for what we were going to do to stop our opponent or to score on our opponent on offense. And that will be the second day. The third day, we will put it all together. And then by the fourth day, the hay is in the barn. And, you're just breaking down film even more. You're making sure that you have everything that you need before the game, as far as what your alignment, what your assignment, what your technique, what do you need for the game? If you got to go get treatment, if you have um, any additional, then sometimes you gotta have to do community events where usually the community events were saved for later in the week when our schedule kind of like slowed down. So you have to go to a hospital or do some sort of speaking engagement or something like that at the end of the week. And then the day before the game, you go, if you travel, that's a travel day. And then you get to the hotel, go through walkthroughs, go get something to eat, and then lay down for the night. Then the next day you get up and you get ready to play the game. I hated night games. I couldn't stand night games because the day would just drag on. You have that whole day that just all you did was just sit in the hotel to think about it. And I didn't figure out a system to clear my head until I was like 8 years in, playing for money. My first like 6 years, I'd be in the hotel. I'd be so anxious. You start to overthink. So that would be that was really the hard part. Morning games, early games, I'm good. We get up, eat breakfast, go to meetings. You have two buses, usually two or three buses. This is when I was with the Seahawks. You have the first bus is usually for the support, like trainers, coaches who wanted to go to the stadium early, and you had the opportunity to go there, especially if you needed treatment. The second bus that was the main bus, where everybody would pretty much go. All the head coach would go. Then you had a third bus. Sometimes. Then
if you're running late,
that would be the stragglers, but hardly anybody was a straggler. And one thing you do learn, especially with any sport, and I learned this, you try to go to I hate to say battle, but the field of competition as early as possible so you can acclimate yourself to it. You can just get used to the whole process of being there. You can understand and like, just feel just make yourself at home. So, you're not, it's not really a new area. You got like 2 or 3 hours you've been there. Go in there, get your treatment, warm up, go out on the field, run, do whatever you want to do, listen to some music, and then you start getting ready for the game. So
how does travel play into this? Because you're on a plane, and planes are dehydrating.
Yeah.
And and it's also you weren't around, right, for the international travel. Yeah,
No,
so you didn't
no,
do any of that. Like,
no,
could you imagine right now flying to Germany for
no.
a game or
Yeah, yeah.
where?
Well,
Because I don't think there's a whole lot of time difference between Germany and the UK, but that's a
yeah.
long, that's a
It's
long flight.
yeah. You pretty much you're 9 hours ahead, and it's I couldn't imagine. And really, to be honest, logistically back then they didn't do it a lot because they really didn't understand and really didn't have the popularity and what. And I'm gonna go off topic a little bit. What football is doing, especially the NFL. The NFL has grown to almost not a limit. They kind of hit a little bit of a ceiling here in the U.S. It's so popular, but it's a monster that needs to get fed. So they're expanding to Germany. Germany, that's going to be like really they eventually they want to have a team in Europe.
Mm.
Oh yeah, eventually they want a team in Europe, but that's like a wish. Now they're going to South America and Mexico. The next continent to conquer is Asia. They want to jump into China so bad, and it's a huge
That's a
undertaking.
horrible flight.
It's a killer flight, and logistically, it would be hard to move all those people, all that equipment, and people wouldn't really watch it. You're watching a game that's 24 hours behind, and it just really wouldn't work. But the money and the resources and the reach of the sport, it's like it has a need to expand. And as far as hydration, when I played, I'm an old dude. Sports science, as far as nutrition, was bare bones.
Hmm.
And I mean, to be honest, I'm dating myself, but a lot of people, if you remember, pretty much, if anything was wrong with you, they give you a salt pill. That was a long time ago. I'm like 10 years removed from that. So the big thing is, nutrition was not really a focus, and hydration wasn't a focus. You just really had to you have to have you just really have to make sure you were rested. And,
Hmm.
and now everything's down to a science. Things measured. Athletes have access to every beneficial tool that will help them perform at a higher level times 10. Cincinnati right now, our budget, just to give you an idea, our budget maybe for football maybe was like 2 million or something like that, if that. And we had to beg for protein drinks, and they sometimes didn't come in. Now their budget is unreal. You can't imagine it. And they have a nutrition snack room that's 24 hours a day that's available to all athletes. Where 24 hours a day, if you need something to eat, you go to that room and you can get whatever pretty much you want in regards to like protein shakes, sandwiches, snacks, fruit. The only thing they don't have, I don't think they have hot meals, but they may eventually have that. The attention to detail of nutrition now compared to when I played is light years now.
Right. Well, I remember when I was younger, when I was in college, Nebraska was the place.
Yes.
Right. Remember they had, I mean, their entire strength and
Yeah.
conditioning, I guess it was a floor, was the entire bottom of the stadium
Well,
from,
yeah.
and
Briefly, they made strength conditioning extremely popular in the certification body that in the NSCA where I have my certification. It originated at the University of Nebraska. My first agent, when I was when I played in the NFL, he had connections to the Nebraska. My off-season training program to get prepared for my pro day came from Nebraska. They had specialized amino acid drinks in the early days where that really you never really heard of it. They had it at Nebraska. Nebraska is cutting edge as far as sports and sports performance.
are they still?
They have some competition because now everybody sees the value in it.
Hmm.
But it's kind of because you go to the University of Oregon. Oregon is just stupid.
Yeah.
Ohio
That's
State.
what I was going to bring. I was Oregon, their level, like even their track, because they're, the hotbed for track and field.
Yes.
I was reading an article about their head coach for track and field where he was talking about that he doesn't put the athletes in shoes for the first part of their training or preseason for them. He has them run on the grass on the infield because they did studies and realized that if they use shoes, that they're weakening their feet muscles.
Wow.
And so by training on the grass, it allows their feet to get a lot stronger,
Yeah.
and then it reduces the likelihood of injury.
Yeah.
So, but he also has a multi-million-dollar stadium where he has the ability, even if it's snowing out, to get these athletes in top condition. Where when I was in New Jersey, the only place around us was Rutgers, and they had a bubble.
I've been to Rutgers.
Yeah, and the bubble was crazy, but everybody was in the bubble because I remember I was playing a softball game in the bubble, and then there was a lacrosse game going on, and then football was training off to the side, and
Yeah.
somebody else was in. Everybody was in the. Anybody who was an outside sport,
Was in the
or
bubble.
had a spring sport, and it was snowing, we were all in the bubble.
Yeah. They're doing the same thing. They're actually building. I think they finished building something. They had a bubble at Cincinnati. Then they just built a whole new indoor facility. They had stands and all kind of crap. The focus on, I kind of lost my train of thought.
Nutrition and all the
Nutrition, the
things
focus on
all these
nutrition.
babies get now.
Yeah, they really are marvel at what they have available, and really what they have available as far as resources in general. Even to study to get your degree, you have every opportunity to finish, and you get every opportunity to get help that you need.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you played how many years, including arena?
Woo! I'd say you want to include college too? Boy, well, we're talking like close to like 18 years, 19 years.
Okay.
Half of my adult life was
So
focused on football.
what information did you get from all your, like, how are you using all that experience and channeling it into your coaching? Like, what lessons did you take, or what are the big things that you feel like contributed to you being a coach now?
I was lucky to be around several great coaches, and what I learned is communication and developing my own communication style that fits how I talk. And I even learned more as I started coaching. For every negative thing I say two positive things, even with my regular members here in the gym. I don't say anything really negative, but I try to be really encouraging. I try to be supportive through everything. But I'm honest. You have to be, as a coach, in order for people to know that you care about them, you have to be honest with them, but you have to put things in a way that they know that you're saying it from a caring position. And that's what I've learned. And I've learned so many different lessons. I've been around some real great coaches, and some of the best people that you can meet as far as somebody who know how to lead people. And really leading people is learning how to shut your mouth sometimes, and then learning how to be a great listener and then giving your opinion. Listen twice and you talk once. And then you try to make sure that you under that everybody's on the same page. And then, the more of a leadership position, those responsibilities increase even more. So, that's what I've learned. I love seeing people. I'm an encouraging coach. I love seeing people do cool stuff. I love when people tell me they've done things they never thought they'd be able to do. And I get so much from that. It makes things so much more worthwhile. And I'm lucky to work with some real good people these days.
So what inspired you to start, like, actually create this gym and do all this? Because that's a different thing. You could go and coach and you could be anywhere. So what made you decide to create your own facility and have people help you on your mission here?
Wow. Well, I wanted to stay around the sports world. And I started out training youth athletes. And I wanted my mission was to teach youth athletes how to train properly so they didn't make some of the crazy mistakes that I made when I was younger and I was preparing to compete and play in my particular sport. Then it kind of morphed and evolved into me training general populations. and where the fundamentals were the same, but the purposes were a little bit different. And now it's a focus on living a healthy, happy life, being able to play with your grandkids, being able to climb stairs, being able to hike if you want to, being able to live in a sense where you can manage the joints that hurt, and you can actually understand how to maintain physical activity and work around those issues, or have the body just adapt to it to where then it's not a major factor. You don't lose confidence in your physical ability.
That's a big one, and it's interesting you talk about young athletes as well. I was talking to an athlete or to my students yesterday, and one of them is a cross country runner, and these young bucks are one was I literally think it was 17, 16, and 15, and they can't touch their toes. And I don't know what's the difference between them and me. I do not recall a time when I was an athlete that I could never, I mean, I could touch my toe, I can put my palms on the ground right now. I don't know why you're 17 years old.
And you can't touch your toes. Yeah, and I've talked to other sports performance coaches, and it is, according to some people, they think that having tight hamstrings that are somewhat limited is not a deal breaker. It's at that age, that's a great question. And a lot of times, those tight hamstrings, because I've known people have tight hamstrings, that's what gives them the ability to be explosive, to accelerate. But if they lose certain function in the lower half, where the hamstrings are not malleable, and then the glute and the hamstring don't learn to work together, the lower back will suffer.
Yes.
And then you have a cascading effect where you'll have everything under the sun will start going wrong. But yeah, I don't get it either. I've seen it myself. But what kills me is when a kid can't do a lunge. I've had youth athletes who are great athletes for the most part within their sport, but they had a problem doing a lunge. It's fascinating.
Yeah, it's. I was remembering I had a friend of mine who would talk to me. She's like, Dana, my hamstring is killing me, or my back is killing me. She kept saying, my back hurts, doing this. And I was, well, what are you doing, And then one day I just touched her hamstring, and I was like, ooh, no, that's not a good thing.
Yes.
And she's like, what are you talking about? I said, your hamstrings are like concrete. That's not a good thing. And strong legs, strong looking legs, I should say.
Yeah.
And one day running down first baseline, pop, her hamstring popped. And I was like, dang, are you okay? And she's like, oh, my back feels better.
Yeah.
And I was so thrown. I'm like, well, tension, right? It's got to get released, but holy moly.
Yeah. In those cases, I know in our earlier conversation, you were telling me about a book you read that you were, and I forget the name of the title, but there's another book called The Supple Leopard. That you probably heard of it. It's one of the coolest books that actually teaches how to trigger point release work helps, massage, movement prep, how it helps the human body keep from being overactive in certain areas, because you got tight hamstrings that are extremely tight. You're playing with fire.
Yeah, for sure. Well, one of the books that I was talking about was Peter Goskew, who wrote the Pain-Free book. And for him, it was, I'll never forget it, because he actually talked about, there's two different stories. The one I love, which is about the woman who slipped and broke her wrist. Mm-hmm. And she said, well, I wouldn't have broken my wrist if the magazine wasn't on the ground and I stepped on it. I just didn't see it and I stepped on it. And he said, well, if you had core strength, you would have slipped on it, but then you would have been able to regain your balance and you would never have fallen. And so they started doing ankle work with her and all this other stuff, and everything improved. But also in his book, he talks about a professional football player that he worked with that kept having wrist pain. And I don't even know how many surgeries this gentleman had had on his wrist, but every time he had the surgery, the pain kept coming back. And eventually they convinced him that if he were to take like an inch off the bone off his wrist, that was because there was some kind of discrepancy. And if they shave it down, then he's going to be okay. And he didn't want to have the surgery, ended up having the surgery and still was in pain. And finally gave up and went to Dr. Igascu, and he saw, it's your shoulder, and realized that the lack of mobility within his shoulder was translating down to his wrist. And that's the reason why. And as soon as he freed up his shoulder through these simple exercises, then the wrist didn't hurt anymore.
I need that book.
It's a really good book. Well, I started using it because I got this weird pain in my foot. It was the top of my foot. Mm-hmm. There's a little triangular bone, which I think is interesting because it's shaped like a triangle, but it's called the cuboid bone.
Yeah.
And it started hurting, and I didn't know what was going on. And so then I went to the doctor, and he looked at it, and he's like, well, I don't know what's going on. And he said, well, you need to wear inserts. Mm-hmm. And so he got me insert or prescription, because I don't know why I need a prescription for inserts, because they were purchased over-the-counter inserts, not even like go mold your feet inserts.
Yeah.
So I go and pay my $40 to go get my super feet or whatever the hell they were at the time. Mm-hmm. And I slide into him, and the pain in my foot exploded. Just whatever was going on, that did not help at all. Oh. And I don't know who gave me the book. Somebody gave me the book, and I started reading the book, and he talked about the idea that the least evolved part on our body are our feet. And because we shove them in shoes, he's like, think about all the things your hands can do and your fingers can do because you use them all the time. Mm-hmm. So you don't use your feet. Before, we used to use feet to climb trees and to, all this other thing, or you'd walk around barefoot. So we don't do that anymore. We protect our feet and we don't do anything. And I am a chronic shoe wearer. I don't like, I have baby feet. So I don't necessarily like to be out there in the wild with my feet because I don't like it. Things hurt and whatever. Yeah. So I never would do it. And then finally I said, I got to, he's saying I should walk barefoot. So I started walking barefoot, and I started doing his lower leg exercises for my ankle strength and my lower leg, like anterior tibialis stuff and whatever. And then the pain just went away.
Wow.
It was really just about not being in balance. That was the pain. There wasn't an injury. There was not, anything like that. It was just, and balance is strength.
Yes, it is.
A lot of people don't get that. So I do a lot of balance work, and you talk about core. So what are some ways that you implement that?
Wow. I want to read that book. I try to do, not to get too nerdy, I try to do a lot of unilateral work where the movement prep involves at least 2 or 3 movements where they're doing something on one foot, whether it be like I have a movement called an alternating reach, where all you're doing is reaching down with the opposite hand, the opposite foot. I actually taught it to a new member today, and you're hinging at the hip and you're reaching down, you're touching that foot, and then you swing the leg forward. So the foot is reacting, the post foot is reacting as you move. Mm-hmm. That's one of my favorite movements to actually work the foot and work the ankle. I have several different variations to that. Another one would be where we do a box step up. I have my members really focus on relaxing their feet, pushing through the whole foot, and we actually press up fast, but we come down slow on the step down. There's variations too. I don't want to get too.
Yeah, but you're firing up all kinds of muscles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I try to connect this with the foot. And when they're doing any sort of farmer's walks, any carries, any kind of heavy carries, I focus on posture. I focus on them having their hips underneath their shoulders, and on the finish they push through the big toe. They push through the big toe, so the big toe is engaged. And a lot of people, I did research on the big toe. The big toe is a major, major factor in the function of the lower half. You know, glute activation, alignment, ankle stability. The big toe functions to help all that work. So yeah, I have several different ways of engaging balance. So yeah.
And I do that too. There's certain exercises where I'll tell people, think about that big toe. Big toe's got to be pushing, and as soon as they do that, they're like, oh, I'm so stable now. It's like, it's kind of when I remember with softball, we used to do certain things. Can't remember what exercise we used to do. I think it was like a leg raise or a hip turn or something like that where you're standing. And if you couldn't keep your balance, you'd stick your finger in your belly button.
Oh yeah.
And then and it would ground you.
I may try to know.
Yeah, it's just the weird things that you do. But I think as an athlete, your brain works differently. And you start to think about the ways that you can do things to make yourself successful doing whatever exercise. And, for me, I know like core strength has always been my game. I've always just believed that with that type of strength, everything else kind of just falls in line.
Okay.
For me as a cyclist, I don't know what my problem is, but a lot of times I fall off my bike.
Uh-huh.
It's usually because I put myself in the wrong position. But I will tell you that some of the most spectacular saves were as a result of core.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Problem more or less is like figuring out to take my feet out of the clips when I'm standing still. I don't think I've ever really fallen riding the bike. It's just trying to getting off it. And to be honest, I've even done that. Like I had a motorcycle and one day I was like in the front and I was trying to do something and I was like not even moving, totally fell. My neighbor came running across the street and pulled me off the motorcycle, get me out of there. It's like, always kind of crazy.
And I can see how the core could actually help stabilize the bike. It helps you control the bike. And that's what's fascinating about movement. I've always been fascinated with human movement ever since I really started getting into it my junior year in college. And because I wanted to be better. I wanted to be the best athlete I could. And so I started focusing on watching how people move. And then I saw the best athletes move different than the normal everyday athlete. And I was like, well, and everybody they moved according to how they're used to moving. And that's what taught me how to just focus on what I could actually do. I didn't have to do it because I tried to do everything perfect. And there's no perfect move, really.
Well, and I'm going to ask you about that because I know that around here, there's especially because it's more of a running area. There's a lot of things that happen in California, but there's a lot of focus sometimes on running. And I noticed that there are places that are working on correcting your running gait or doing all that other stuff. And what is your opinion about those kinds of things? Because I know what mine is.
Yeah, I think you're playing with fire. Yeah, I think you're taking away from somebody's natural movement. Unless that movement is putting them in harm's way and causing some restriction within the actual movement pattern. And then I think you should really kind of back off and figure out where because usually there's either a strength imbalance somewhere or there's a mobility issue, or stability issue. You need to find out what that is. But don't, I played around with my gait for years and it did nothing but, just make things confusing. And when you try to correct somebody's natural gait, you're playing with fire and you're probably taking away from their natural ability to do the function and work that they want to improve on.
Yeah. My thing is that I've only seen injury come as a result of those changes where all of a sudden now this person has a knee injury or an ankle issue or their hip is bothering them because you're telling them that they have to move differently than their body is willing to.
Yeah.
We're pretty adaptive humans.
Yes. And there's no perfect movement. I don't care who you are. And, I'm getting into training golfers. And one thing that is in the golf world that they're really starting to understand, there's no perfect golf swing. Everybody swings the club according to what God gave them and what made them effective within that rotational movement.
Mm-hmm.
There's no way you can change somebody's golf swing. Golf swings change and evolve according to age, use, overuse, and just, the body's starting to, to kind of, deteriorate. But you can never try to overcorrect somebody's natural movement. It makes.
What do you feel about, or because now we're dipping into golf, how do you feel about strength training in golf? And I'll use Tiger as an example. You know, he was kind of long and lanky when he began. And I don't know if it's a chicken or egg situation because the boy started playing golf at 3 or 4 years old.
Mhm.
He put on a good amount of bulk, and then all of a sudden he started having all these back issues. And I mean, do you see the correlation? Is there a way to get strong without it being bulky?
Yeah, I mean, with Tiger didn't, and this is what I'm talking to other golf pros and other golf fitness professionals. Tiger started bulking up after his legs started giving out. When his knees started being an issue. When his left knee, his knees are they've been used well.
Mm-hmm.
So he started, he had to adjust his golf swing and he had to really, because all power comes from the ground. And once you start having issues in the lower half, especially for golfers, and you lose power. So in order for him to try to maintain power, he started to bulk up. And yeah, and that was the gamble with him. And his back was just, I think his back was just going to go out because of the overuse of heavy rotation. But he was the first to make strength and conditioning popular.
Mm-hmm.
He was the first, and it's still an element within golf where they don't really take it serious. They take it serious at the higher levels, but at the lower levels, everybody still believes that practicing and over practicing works. Skill work works, but in order to build a pretty good golfer, you have to build an athlete. You have to create them and make them into an athlete. Golf is an athletic sport. If anybody tells you something different, they're foolish. You have a lot of athletic movement within the golf swing.
Yeah.
And it's very explosive.
It's funny because a couple of weeks ago I talked about Martina Navratilova and how she changed tennis because of the fact that before, I don't believe anybody really worked out. And now you're watching all these babies that are riding bikes between not sets, but between games. They're doing all of these things to prep themselves in order to play instead of like smoking a cigarette and then walking up.
Yeah.
But
balls, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're fine.
One of the main things is you want to build athletes. You want the athletic foundation of the athlete to be solid. You want it to be so solid. And you want to continue to develop long-term development as an athlete. It goes along with skill development. They're hand in hand. And you want all sports, you want a kid to be the best athlete that they can be. You want the adult to be the best athlete they can be. Even my clients who don't even play sports, my members who don't even play sports, I train them as athletes. They just don't know it. They do a lot of athletic movement, and it folds over into better function in their normal lives.
That's great. All right. So I know we're coming to the end of our time. So I want to ask you, what advice would you give a former athlete that's aspiring to be a strength and conditioning coach or to head in this direction?
Wow. It depends on where you go. If you're going into the educational sector where you're working for a school, you need to find in all of this, you need to find a mentor. Even if you go in the private sector like I am. But the foundation should be you developing your coaching acumen, you developing your coaching philosophy, and that's just by training and just training people. if you want to say the public sector. In the private sector, you have to have a mixture of both, and then you need to have a crash course in marketing. You need to learn how to market what you do and let people know what you do, and do it in a way where you show value to the people that you're supposed to reach. You're not going to reach everybody. If you go into this industry thinking that you're going to reach everybody, you're going to make everybody healthy and fit, I mean, you're fooling yourself. You're going to reach the people that match your coaching style and how you communicate. And the key to doing that is just getting out and just getting the word out and letting people know what you do.
That's great. Hey, where can we find you?
Oh, you can find me on Instagram, letsprotraining.com. I'm on X somewhat. Use it as an additional Facebook, Atlas Pro Training. I have a website, www.atlasprotraining.com, which I probably just said. And I'm here in Orlando, probably like 5 miles from the airport, Orlando International Airport. So I would love to meet anybody who wants to have some additional conversations, and that's pretty much the gist of it.
Thank you so much, Ernest, for your time. I appreciate it.
Dana, thank you. It was a pleasure. Again, you can reach me at atlasprotraining.com. My email is eallen@atlasprotraining.com, and I'm here to help.
Thank you.